Welcome to the Chester Centurions Podcast, where we explore the journeys, challenges and insights of business leaders and entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Alan Bark, and in each episode we uncover real stories of resilience, growth and the mindset needed to succeed. Today, I'm joined by Jonathan Fell, the second generation owner of the Ice Cream Farm, one of Cheshire's most beloved family attractions. Originally a dairy farm, the business evolved into an ice cream manufacturing company before transforming into a nationally recognised visitor destination. Over the years, Jonathan has played a key role in its expansion, including a $5 million renovation that turned the ice cream farm into the incredible attraction we all love and enjoy today. In this episode, Jonathan shares his entrepreneurial journey from working in every part of the business to taking over and driving it forward. We discuss the lessons learned from scaling too fast, how to stay innovative in a fast-changing industry, and the realities of running a high-profile business. He opens up about work-life balance, risk-taking, and the importance of brand strategy in building a lasting legacy. If you're a business owner, aspiring entrepreneur, or just fascinated by the journey of a growing family business, this episode is packed with insights. So let's dive in. Jonathan, welcome to the Chester Centurion Podcast today.
Hello.
Listen, before we get started, I'd love to know more about you and what it is you do, and maybe how long you've been trading, and a little bit about the business.
Yeah, sure. So I'm second generation. My parents started manufacturing ice cream back in 1986, about a year before I left school. So I was straight in it from the beginning, I guess. And it was a diversification of a dairy farm. Milk quotas came in the mid-80s, which restricted how much milk you could produce. So lots of farmers were looking at different diversification ideas, and at that time there wasn't really the Ben and Jerry's and your Häagen-Dazs ice cream brands that we know today. There was just your soft scoop from the supermarket. So there was one other farm-based ice cream being manufactured in the country, which was a farmer up in Yorkshire, and my dad went to visit him. Got a bit of insight of how to go about it, and we kicked off. Initial investment was only something like 40 grand, very small kit, secondhand freezers, and we opened to the public on site, and that's how it started. Going through the years, there was always these two sides of the business. There was always selling ice cream on the farmyard, which it was still a working farm, and then gradually the wholesale side of the business started to grow. It was quite a unique product. It was a good product. And local hotels, pubs and restaurants showed an interest. So how that side of the business started to grow quite organically. And both sides of the business grew, coincidentally, at about the same speed. You know, the demand for people visiting the farm grew. And in terms of turnover, financially, it was very similar as well, both sides of the business. So going through the years, the focus was very much on the manufacturing in the early days because it was such a unique product. My mum ran the ice cream parlour and the coffee shop on the farm, and my dad was more involved in the manufacturing. I was in the factory for the first few years, and then I sort of headed up the wholesale side of the business, and I delivered ice cream for too many years I wish to imagine, really. But yeah, it was really growing really quite quickly on both sides. But as I say, the focus was very much on the manufacturing. And then jumping ahead, I guess we had a turning point where we were going for larger contracts, high volume, low margin manufacturing, supplying the multiples. And we won a large contract with a supermarket chain, which was a 5-year deal. And they pulled the plug after 18 months. So that was a really hard lesson to learn. So it made us focus sort of much more closer to home. It was a regional brand being called Cheshire Farm Ice Cream. We were open to the public, but there was always this confusion between the name of the product and what we were on the farm, what visitors were coming to visit. And we were known locally as the Ice Cream Farm or Cheshire Ice Cream Farm, or but it never really had that identity like the product did. So, moving through the years and jumping right ahead to, well, it's 10 years ago now, but, probably about 2011, I took over the lease of the farm, and I was overseeing both sides of the business. But much of my focus was on the visitor attraction side because I could see a real opportunity there of what we could possibly achieve with it. And because we'd learned a lot of lessons from history in terms of the big isn't beautiful and large contracts, you can lose them as quickly as you can win them.
Mm.
So I developed this idea that where we sold the most ice cream was in a leisure environment. And I just thought, well, if we can control that environment and almost create our own marketplace for our product, we've got sustainability there, we've got control, and we're not going to lose anything that we're in control of. So we started focusing on what we're doing at the farm. And 2015, we invested what ended up being about £5 million into a complete reinvention of what the ice cream farm was, what the brand was all about. What was the ice cream farm? Does ice cream grow on trees? And all the weird and wonderful things that people can see today. And the easiest way to describe, I guess, the thinking behind it was that we really wanted it. Basically, that was the direction that we took. We saw over the years more and more demand with families and children, and obviously play goes very nicely alongside ice cream. And we knew through our wholesale side, different places like Chester Zoo, the amount of ice cream that visitor attraction sold would be the way to do it. And so we combined that ice cream with food and obviously play, but giving the play an identity that fitted with the brand of the ice cream. And that's coming up to 10 years ago now. So that's hopefully covered most of it.
Listen, Jonathan, it's no surprise I'm a massive fan of the venue. I love taking my daughter there. I'm also a massive fan of the ice cream, and so thank you so much. You make my life just that little bit better, John.
Well,
Absolutely.
it does. It relies on the product. It is a good product, and
Yes.
that helps.
Yeah, for sure. So, listen, what motivated you to get involved in the business, and what was the driving force behind your decision to take on this entrepreneurial role?
Um, well, I guess there's two answers to that. Back in the early days, I wasn't going to go to university. I guess you could say, and I'll be very honest about the fact, I probably took the easy option. There was a ready-made business there. My parents had the foresight to know that neither me or my brother were going to be farmers. So I think certainly that was in their thinking when they diversified, and they gave me encouragement to join the business. And it was pretty cushy because they were obviously of an age where they had all the responsibility and running the business, and I got to learn every little part of the business, work from the bottom up, if you like. So that put me in good stead, and with a good work ethic, and how I could learn things off my parents of how to run a business. As I say, worked in every part of it, and then gradually got to understand what I was passionate about,
Mhm.
which I guess it happened quite organically, but that's sort of coming forward to when I guess the early 2000s, when I had to pull my finger out a bit more and just not turn up with a hangover, although I still did. Um, but yeah, started having conversations about, right, what if this is ultimately going to be a succession? What am I going to do with it? And we knew that the lease was coming to an end. We knew that there was a huge opportunity. There was demand for the product. There was demand for what we did at the farm. Um, Looking back now, there was an argument to say, don't fix it if it ain't broke. And, we could have stayed as we were because it was popular as we were. And I guess our biggest problem was just controlling the numbers, which is part of the thinking behind the huge expansion that we did. And but I guess it was seeing the opportunity and how we could create an identity, and I got quite obsessed with branding. The first toe in the water was when we came up with a branding strategy around the ice cream farm and what that was. And I think it just made sense to me that,
Hmm.
and it made everything have more meaning,
Hmm.
and build on that core brand and come up with the sub brands and the different ideas for the different play areas and giving it all an ice cream twist. Honeycomb Canyon, Silver Cone, Marshmallow Mound, Strawberry Falls. It all, whilst it's all activities that you might see elsewhere, it gave it more of an identity.
No, I get that. And now you've got your feet under the table. What would you regard as some of the sort of common misconceptions about running a business, and how do you go about addressing them?
Um, well, every business is different, I guess. So I think it'd be fair to say that the misconceptions would differ, depending what business you're talking about. Now, for this business, we've been very well known, I guess, locally, and very hopefully, loved as part of the community, and really, people have seen us grow.
Hmm.
I guess the big misconception that we've experienced from the redevelopment, which was such you know, a, a knee-jerk, I guess, development around what we were doing before,
Hmm.
was we've been taken over by a big corporate, and there's been outside investment, and we're making a fortune because we're so busy. But the reason we were so busy because it was such good value for money,
Hmm.
and it wasn't as simple as we're making a load of money. We had to borrow the money, we've got to pay the money back, and if and when we did have to put the prices up, which was very rarely,
Hmm.
there was obviously feedback, I guess is a nice way of putting it. And obviously more recently we've experienced that, even more so because, the challenges are much more, following COVID, and how cheap it was before, with the business model being a free to enter before COVID. Our biggest problem, like it was historically, was dealing with the numbers, but commercially we had to make sure that we got the revenue we needed for the business to be sustainable. And it did work, but it brought other problems, traffic volumes, dealing with car parking and things like that. So I guess that's the big one, is that people seem to assume that we make a lot of money. I think it's the opposite. We spend far too much money, because I think I've discovered that's what I'm good at. But we spend everything that we make, and we reinvest everything that we do. So I think that's probably one of the biggest ones.
I think that's a really valid point, isn't it? That to remain, and we're going to come on to innovation in a second, but to remain innovative, to remain fresh, there has to be a level of investment, and that sometimes requires you to service a debt, and from the outside looking in, you've got this beautiful venue, but sometimes behind the scenes you've got to service that debt, and that debt is just part of growing a business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's difficult. Well, we couldn't have done what we've done without the debt.
Mm.
We could have, I guess, been a bit more, I guess, play safe, and just grow more organically, and reinvest our own money rather than borrow the money, and it would obviously take a lot longer. Um, but I think I was probably a little bit impatient, and I would have built Disneyland if I could. If I could have borrowed more money, which we really did stretch ourselves,
Mhm.
and following the reinvestment, I guess there was a little bit of naivety of, uh, what we'd done, because it did catapult us to, people being aware of us nationally. We ended up being, that first summer that we opened, we had a footfall of over 250,000, which in that year, was actually more than Chester Zoo had.
Wow.
And I don't know how much bigger Chester Zoo is physically, but I don't know, 20th the size maybe. I don't know. So it brought with it, major challenges, but obviously confidence that we were doing something that people were interested in.
Yeah, 100%. And for for my comment. It was worth every penny, Jonathan.
Good, good.
Listen, how do you maintain a work-life balance as a business owner? And do you have any sort of personal rituals or habits that keep you motivated and focused?
Um, well, personally, I didn't get married until I was 40. So I only had myself to worry about, which was a big enough job in the early days. So it's really just making sure that you have got that balance, I suppose,
Mhm.
as simple as that sounds. At the moment, life's very different, and I am married with children, and I guess I've finally become the demographic which I've been targeting. I wasn't really experienced in what we were trying to build 10 years ago. But it's just making that time. And I think COVID helped. It's one of the positives out of COVID, that it made you realize that I don't have to be here all the time. And I can delegate and I can trust the team. And arguably they run it far better than I ever did. Now we're much more professional, and that's thanks to the team. So I can step back now, and I'm in a very fortunate position that we've got to a size where I don't have to be here all the time,
Mhm.
like I used to be. A family business, it's ingrained in you that a member of the family's got to be there the whole time.
Mhm.
But then as we grew, and you have to rely on other people, it becomes easier to stay away, and home's home and work's work, which it wasn't that for a lot of years really, because I lived on site for a long time, and then when the house actually got took over and it's all offices now, I live just down the road, but now I'm further away, and but it's taken a long time to make sure that the business is self-sufficient, and there's practical problems that happen. We have issues with power capacity and fuses going and things like that. So it's making sure for every little incident that might happen that we've got a contingency for that.
Before we move on, Jonathan, I've got to ask: Are the children part of your research and development team?
No, they are now. Absolutely. I have to take what they say with a pinch of salt sometimes. But yeah, I mean, Maddie, our eldest, she was born. Well, my wife and Maddie came out of hospital the day before we opened
Okay.
in 2015.
Okay.
So that was a challenging year in more ways than one. So yeah, they've grown up with it, uh, and they got to experience it on their own all through COVID as well, a lot of the time. So they do. I think they take it for granted a little bit, which
Yeah.
is a bit, um, I guess, odd,
Mm.
because they're not always wanting to come, but actually, thankfully, they do. If we're struggling with what to do with them, they will suggest to come to the farm. So we just come and do a bit of a not so secret shop. Um,
Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it.
yeah.
Listen, the business landscape's moving faster than probably it's ever moved. And how do you stay adaptable and open to change? And are there any specific strategies on how to remain innovative?
Um, I would struggle to come up with a specific strategy as such. I think there's certain things I always look to when we're looking at new ways to create revenue and new ways to improve the visitor experience. And we have this saying, we want to make it extraordinary, not ordinary, and different things like that. And really trying to think outside the box. Everything we do, we tend to check it. Is this making it better for the teams? Is it making it better for the customer? And if them two align, that works. In terms of innovation, we're lucky that we're naturally quite different with what we do, and whilst there are many other farms that sell ice cream, we did get a head start,
Mhm.
um, and I'd like to think, not every farm that sells ice cream will go in the direction we went. So we are what we are, and I think we just stay true to the brand and the strategy of that brand, and make sure that we do always sense check what we're doing, and does it make sense to our core ethos, what we're all about, and and stay true to them really simple things like, is it value for money? Is it going to improve the experience? And always try and think outside the box, which is an obvious thing to say, but we're lucky that, as I say, we're lucky that we've got a product and an experience that's quite different anyway.
Very good. And what next for the farm? What are your future plans and goals for the business? And what do you envisage as the next chapter of your journey?
Well, it's changed a lot, if I'm really honest. Before COVID, after the redevelopment and then the few years of learning very quickly what we'd become, I was obsessed with trying to find another site and do the same thing elsewhere, even in the same vicinity. So, we could push people to another area. And I was looking at outside investment and how we could possibly do that. We ultimately demerged in 2019, so the business itself was structured in a way so the leisure side of the business could take on investment. Sadly, it took all the debt at the same time, but it was just getting the business in a position to really grow. And my thinking then was to make the ice cream farm a national brand. Following COVID, I think, much like a lot of business owners, I haven't lost ambition, but I guess my appetite for risk is a bit less. So it is really, we've almost generated a new business with the new business model coming out of COVID. It is like starting again to some extent, because whilst everything is similar and we run the same once you're through the door, we've made that drastic fundamental change of that we charge an entrance fee, which was considered, over and over again, we're doing the right thing. And in hindsight, I don't think we could have carried on as we were, with the cost of living and things like that. People would just be overrun with people spending no money, and it's a shame because that's what made us different. But we are in that rat race now, but we just are very heavily focused on value for money still. And, we don't get carried away. That's why these recent challenges that our lovely government are throwing at us, it gives us room for the maneuver because we haven't been greedy in the past. So we just hope people keep coming and understand why there is changing. And it's very minimal, any changes that we do make. So don't want anybody to think that we're going crazy with increasing prices, because we've got a balance there between how many people come and what they spend. And we want to get that balance right. We want to keep the footfall to a healthy level. If we put the prices up too much, that footfall is going to drop. So we've just got to try and get that balance right. In terms of the future, we've got a few things going on. We are actually, diggers arrived this week to build a new play area called Ice Cream Fields. It's our biggest investment since the redevelopment in 2015. I guess last time we spoke, it was all a bit up in the air in terms of just a planning application, really. But that's all sorted now, so we're away. We hope to open that in May sometime, and it should really, really help with capacity, with drumming up interest. It's something, the newest thing that we've done. It's been a while now since we've done anything new, and it's really trying to, again, like I said before, trying to do things a little bit differently, and giving it that bit of meaning. So that's happening this year. We have got longer term plans for potentially some accommodation. Nothing new. A lot of visitor attractions are going down that way. But again, I like to think that the way we're going to do it is going to be significantly different to everybody else. Very much based around a new innovative brand, which creates something that actually I'm very excited about, which don't really want to talk too much about it now, but that's something that, again, accommodation isn't anything new on visitor attractions, but it's really tapping into that area where accommodation providers working with visitor attractions, working together to really promote the area. And I'm quite excited about that, but it's very early days, that one.
Okay.
But just trying to make the business as good as we can make it following a very, very challenging time. So it's proving this new business model, and making sure that we're sustainable and we're going to be still here in another 10, 20, 30 years, whatever it might be.
Well, I need to come down and have a look at this ice cream fields. That sounds fascinating, Jonathan. Listen, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate the insight you've given us into the farm and you know how far it's come and since it started and how it's changed since it started is absolutely fascinating. But I've got one more question for you, and it's a big one, if you'll allow me. So what I'm looking for is your top 3 pieces of advice that you would give to aspiring entrepreneurs or someone starting their journey or maybe facing some challenges in their business. What would be your top 3 pieces of advice?
I guess I can only speak from experience, really, and that's all you can do in this with a question like that, I suppose. One is definitely work in every part of your business to really understand what it is. Now, obviously, that's a very wide-ranging answer, but depending on the type of business, if it is growing, if you could be confident in every element of your business when you're not doing that job and somebody else is doing it, then I think that helps enormously when you do get bigger. As I've mentioned, we always like to think outside the box and, really sense check every decision, true to the brand and true to what you're trying to achieve. And again, I guess the third is, and this some people buy into brand strategy, other people don't, but I am a big believer that it's the mechanics of a business, certainly a business that's public facing like ours, and I think you're really straight true to the performer branding strategy. No matter how big your business is, it gives everything meaning and it gives you a platform and a framework to work to. And you can come back to that every time you're making a decision, just to sense check that. And it also helps with your teams and all your employees to really understand what you're trying to achieve. And you've just got that, we call it the playbook, that everybody can relate to and understand why we're here and won't want to get into purpose, but what the purpose is of the business and what we're all about. So I guess that's, if I had to choose 3 off the top of my head, that would be the 3.
They're beautiful. Understand every aspect of your business. Think outside the box and build brand strategies and stay true to them. Real gold dust there, Jonathan. Thank you.
Oh, that's good. Good.
Thank you. And hopefully we'll catch up soon. Good talking to you.
Thanks, Alan. And you. All the best. Cheers.
Bye-bye.